All right, guys, happy Monday. And it looks like people are listening to our private conversations again. I'm just talking to you guys like you're my cousins and my friends. And then I look up and the media is very, very mad at me all the time. And I got to tell you, it is getting more intense out there. I think actually it's even going international. Emmanuel Macron, the president of France, I'm pretty sure him and his husband, Brigitte, are going to come for my life because check out this headline all the way from France. Brigitte Macron. La rumeur qui inquiétait l'Élysée. I don't know if I said that good, guys, but what it means, what it translates to is the rumor that worries Élysée. So they are concerned about something, and I can tell you what that something is. All that and more coming up on Candace. All right, guys, so we are talking a lot about psychology lately, and that's making the media pretty angry because they are a part of this sort of psychological simulation. So I'm going to tell you a true story, and it is wild. And I know that if you are reading the book Chaos that I have been basically saying is required reading at this point, if you're going to listen to this podcast, then you know that our CIA has been up to no good for a very long time. Scary stuff. It's actually a very tough, scary read because you have to come to terms with the fact that our government is evil. Our government has done tremendously evil things. They will continue to do that until we wake up. So true story, the CIA back in the day did this experiment where they placed 18 people in a room. 17 of those people were actually CIA agents, and one of them was just an unwitting member of the public. So imagine they pick you, you think that you're going into a room with 17 other people who are from the street just like you, but in reality, those 17 other people are agents and they are conducting an experiment on you. So the person that was running the experiment showed every single person in the room a picture of a triangle. It was very clearly a picture of a triangle, and he asked every person in the room to simply state what they saw on the picture. Well, despite it clearly being a triangle, all of the agents were instructed to say square. So imagine you're in this room with 17 other people, you think that you're all off the side of the street, and they start going around, and everyone says, oh, what is that? A square, a square. What do you see? A square, a square, a square, a square. Well, by the time it gets to you, and you're the 18th person, you're going, oh, am I crazy? I see a triangle. And guess what that 18th person said? Well, they said square because they didn't want to be the crazy person in the room. Really think about the implications of that experiment. That is exactly how the media works. They are the agents in the room that are repeating square, 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 until you're supposed to just completely abandon reason and just join them and say, totally, that's a square. That's what I see too, even though you know that's completely not true. And the reality is the majority of people do this today because you don't want to think that you're crazy. When you look back at COVID and you see everybody wearing the masks and 6 feet social distancing and all of this stuff that was so clearly absurd, people fell in line because they just thought, I don't want to be the crazy person. I don't want to be the anti-vaxxer. I don't want to be called insane. I can't think of a greater modern example going on right now of that experiment than the Brigitte Macron story. It is an absurdity. There is an overwhelming amount of evidence. And Emmanuel Macron is married to a biological male. I know that sounds crazy. And it sounds crazy especially because the mockingbirds in media are just refusing to debunk it. Instead, they're just trying to tell you that, yep, well, you guessed it. It's a square. Well, it's obviously a woman. Don't ask any more questions. Yeah, jogging your memory to Piers Morgan last week, trying to make me say that it was a square. Take a listen. Why don't you go pursue a primary source? Why don't you go find the articles that were written by the French journalists? Because this did not come from me. This came from French journalists.
And while they were working, Brigitte Macron is suing.
Let me finish a statement, Piers. Okay. While they were working on this piece, the Macrons sent their secret service to interrupt this. This is not a normal thing that you do when somebody's about to publish a lie. You would just say it's ridiculous, publish it, and we'll dispute it. They sent the secret service to intimidate these journalists. They took their phones. They held them. They wanted to know everyone who was working on the piece. And what they uncovered was absolutely fascinating. What he's trying to tell you, this is crazy. This is wacky. Why don't you just go pursue a primary source?
Well,
I'm not the primary source. It would be very easy to dispute this. All Brigitte Macron would have to do is produce a single photo of her in the first 30 years of her life, or to go on a little walk with her brother, who she alleges that she is not. So that's incredible. He's saying, no, I haven't even looked at the story. I have not pursued a primary source because that's not the task of a mockingbird. He is supposed to just say what the state wants the public to think. And in this case, they just want you to think that it's crazy. Hence, Bari Weiss, formerly of the New York Times, when she tweeted a celebratory tweet about me being fired from the Daily Wire, she actually wrote an entire article. And she tweeted this. Take a look. It says, and this piece doesn't even touch on her truly bat views about Brigitte Macron. That it took the Daily Wire its longest ever ties with Candace Owens is alarming. Oh, there goes another one of the words. This is alarming. This is truly bat insane. Again, psychological. That's just her trying to say to the public, don't even look at that. That is so crazy that I couldn't even take the time to simply debunk it. And it's a very easy thing to debunk. This is the job of the mainstream media. And this is something that you are going to have to tether yourself to. You're going to have to tether yourself to the reality that they are constantly making psychological gains by trying to convince you that crazy is sane and sane is crazy. So let me tell you about this Brigitte Macron story and how I came across it, because like I told Piers Morgan, no, of course, this did not come from me. Why would I just be sitting around as an American citizen being like, I wonder if I could look into a French conspiracy theory? Of course not. I was actually just reading the Daily Mail one day, and I saw a headline about how Emmanuel Macron was absolutely furious about these rumors. And I was like, what rumors? I haven't even heard about anything. And then I stumbled upon quite a pretty big situation that has been going on in France, in that it has gotten so big that, yes, Macron has been tasked now with going out to the public and trying to dissuade them from believing that his wife, Brigitte Macron, was actually born a man. Now, of course, when I saw the headline, I agreed. I was like, yeah, that is absolutely insane. Let me read this article real quick. And the article stipulated that there was a theory. And immediately, in reading the article, my mockingbird senses came on. I realized that the article itself was also not debunking anything, and this should be a very easy thing to debunk. Rather, they were just doing what Bari Weiss was doing, what Piers was doing, and just saying it was crazy. Now, in this article, they had only 2 photos embedded as proof that Brigitte Macron ever lived as a woman for the first 30 years of her life. Here are the 2 photos. I'm going to show them to you. Here's the first photo. And they basically were just like, look at cute little Brigitte Macron sitting on her mother's lap. And instantly, I promise you, I hadn't even looked into the primary source of the story. And I said, well, that's weird, because Brigitte looks to me like the person on the far left. That is Brigitte's whole face. I mean, you looking at this? I mean, if you're listening to this in a podcast, do go find it on YouTube thereafter. But I went, no, that actually, the person on the lap doesn't look anything like Brigitte. Whatever. Then I looked at photo 2 that they presented, and I went, wait, Brigitte's quite old. This does not look like a photo that is that old. This actually looks like a new photo that was just turned into black and white. Whatever, I put it in the back of my mind. I decided to go pursue the primary source, and I was shocked at what I stumbled upon. You guys, this was not some Reddit conspiracy theory. This was not some people sitting around with tinfoil hats being like, let's just make up a rumor about the First Lady of France. No, far from that. This was a story that was worked on for 3 years by journalists, which was eventually published in a 6-part series in a publication known as Faits et Documents. Xavier Poussard worked on the story, Natasha Ray worked on the story, and they crossed hands with genealogists who worked on this story. So again, no, this was not some random conspiracy theory. This was 3 years of hard work. And what they determined was that Brigitte Macron did not exist for the first 30 years of her life. Listen to what I'm saying to you. There is no proof that this human being existed for 30 years. It's a very easy thing to debunk, guys. Okay? Very easy thing to debunk. If somebody came at me and said, Candace Owens, you did not exist for the first 30 years, I'd be like, what are you Here's my high school yearbook. Here's my middle school yearbook. Here's me and the homies standing outside with too thin eyebrows because that was the style when I was in high school. Here's me, a picture of me cheerleading. Here's me when I played the flute for 6 months. Here's me and my sisters. It's such a nonsense that I would instead send out people to call it crazy without giving them 30 years worth of proof to debunk it. Let's not forget, Brigitte Macron also has 3 kids. I could show you photos of me pregnant. Oh, here's me in the hospital when we had our first child. They're not doing any of that. Instead, what they did, as you just heard me say on Piers Morgan, is they sent the Secret Service out to intimidate the journalists. Yeah, while Natasha Ray was working on the story, she was getting close. She realized that there was one woman that she should question. Well, this woman happens to still be friends with Brigitte Macron, and she alerted the Macrons to the fact that journalists were working on this story. And so the Secret Service showed up at Natasha Ray's home, detained her, intimidated her, took her phone, wanted to know who else was working on the story. This is simply not something you do when you are telling the truth. And by the way, they're still doing it. Natasha was the first victim, but not the last. There was also a journalist for a Parisian liberal establishment publication called Le Nouvel Obs, who jumped on the story because she thought this is insane. It's going to be very easy for me to debunk it. And obviously, Brigitte is in fact a woman. And guess what happened? That journalist could not debunk the story. She too was amazed at what she was discovering. And then she too was tracked down by the Secret Service. So what is this theory that the state is working so hard to protect? What is this secret, rather, that they're working so hard to protect? I'm going to tell you what it is that the journalists are alleging. And I think it's a very credible allegation. Let's get back to that first photo, okay? Their theory is that Brigitte Macron was actually born Jean-Michel Trogneau. That is the person that you are seeing in this photo here on the far left. That would make, if in fact that was Brigitte Macron, that would make her 8 years older than she is currently presenting herself to the public. They are alleging that Brigitte lived as Jean-Michel Trogneau for 30 years and then she transitioned. And I will tell you, the theory is credible for a ton of reasons. The first one being is that they were able to pull together a string of interviews where Brigitte Macron seemingly doesn't know her own age. As just one example, in one video that Natasha Ray had uncovered, Brigitte was giving an interview and she was recalling having lived alone in the United States during the moon landings in 1969. Well, that's the thing what they say, or I should say Judge Judy says this about lying. She's like, if you lie, you have to have a good memory. If you don't lie, you don't have to have a good memory. And it turns out that Brigitte perhaps does not have the best memory because she would have been 16 at that time. So for her to say that she was living alone in the United States, what was she doing at the age of 16 living alone in the United States? You're not allowed to do that. Jean-Michel, on the other hand, Jean-Michel Trogneau, who the journalists are alleging that Brigitte lived as, well, he would have been 24 years old at that time. That would make more sense. Now I'm giving you one example. There are multiple examples where they have found in interviews that it seems that Brigitte just does not know her own age. Of course, you're probably thinking rationally, you're coming online, you're going, okay, well, where's Jean-Michel? Brigitte alleges that that's her older brother. Well, guess what, guys? He's missing. The genealogists basically looked through, your entire life, obviously. You're creating data everywhere when you're getting married and when you're going to get IDs. The genealogists can trace you existing. So what they determined was that for 30 years, her brother, Jean-Michel Trogneau, existed. They found tons of evidence that this individual existed. And then right at the same time that Brigitte Macron suddenly comes into the public sphere, Jean-Michel goes missing. Now you have Brigitte and her brother is missing. And you know what, guys? You would think, why don't you just go on a walk with your brother? If this is the rumor that is driving you crazy, why don't you just walk out with your brother and do a press conference and be like, hey, conspiracy theories are bad, okay? They are very stressful and they are hurtful to my family. Here is my brother, Jean-Michel Trogneau. No, they can't do that. He's just simply missing, guys. And you're crazy to even ask for her to simply show where her brother's been since she was magically born into the public sphere at the age of 30. Now let's go back to that second photo that I showed you that the Daily Mail had embedded into their article. The one that I just instantly, without even having looked into the story, said, that looks too new. I mean, Brigitte's pretty old, no matter which way you slice it. Well, they were able to determine that that's actually a recolorized photo of her daughter, Tefon. I'm going to show you a side-by-side here. It is very obviously Tefon. So you're telling me the media gets onto the story, and as a way to debunk it, you accidentally present a photo of your daughter and recolorize it into black and white? Again, you guys, this is not normal. The press doesn't even pretend that that is Brigitte anymore, by the way. They're like, oh, that was just a mistake. Oh, yeah, that's Tefon. So you're probably wondering, okay, but Candace, Brigitte has kids, 3 kids. How is that possible? Well, you already know how that's possible, you guys. We live in the age of transgenderism. Caitlyn Jenner is a transgendered individual who has fathered children, and that is what they are alleging Brigitte did, that Brigitte at first fathered her 3 children and then transitioned into a woman. And this theory is further backed up by photos. When I tell you they were this in-depth, and the journalists and then the larger French public all got involved in trying to figure out who, in fact, Brigitte was for the first 30 years of her existence. They even found a series of photos of when Brigitte was a teacher. And she chose to bizarrely cover her neck with a scarf for virtually an entire year. And they're like, this is the exact time that Brigitte got the Adam's apple surgery. It is that detailed. You absolutely must look into this story. Even if you can't wrap your head around the fact that the state could lie like this, that Emmanuel Macron could lie like this, that they could continue to gaslight the French public like this. Well, there's some other things that should have immediately let you know that something is not right in this relationship. How about the story of how they got together? Like I said on Piers Morgan, at best, you are looking at a scenario where Brigitte Macron is a pervert. The story in how they got together is that Brigitte alleges that she was a teacher and Macron was this 14, 15-year-old student that she was attracted to. What? Yeah, and they just struck up a relationship. She says at the time that she was married with 3 kids and made the decision to divorce and leave her husband for a 14-year-old boy. Does that register to you as a normal situation? And then guess what, guys? You're gonna find this to be insane. But then you would go, okay, well, let's just talk to Brigitte's ex-husband. Yeah, well, when Emmanuel Macron won the election, some journalists around the world were trying to track down the now First Lady's ex-husband, and they couldn't find him. Nope, without a trace. Could not find this man anywhere. They were like, hey, yeah, where's your ex-husband? And they kept going, oh, no, he's extremely private. He's extremely private. And then one day, Tefon, Brigitte's daughter, just randomly announces, as journalists began going, this is really weird. Where is your dad? That he died and they chose to cremate him in a private ceremony. Don't ask any questions. Yep, dead. Can't find a trace of him. Can't find proof that he ever existed, but he's now dead and don't ask any questions. You guys, this is just, well, to put it like Barry Weiss, bat insane. It's so easy for someone to just produce a shred of evidence that this individual existed for the first 30 years of her life. Don't let them make you think that you're the crazy one, okay? It's a triangle, my friends. It is not a square. You know, the lesson in all of this is that the state, through decades of psychological research, institutes that were dedicated to seeing how us, the public, the general public, would respond to certain things, they were able to determine that you are much more likely to believe a big lie rather than a small one. Because your brain just goes, oh, there's no way this could be a lie. It's so big. It's like when you hear those stories and you're like, how did this woman not know that her husband had an entire family? Well, because you would think you're crazy to believe that your husband was traveling and started an entire family. The lie is so big that you're actually not likely to believe it. So when the state lies, they lie big. And you've got to be willing to be the person in the room. You got to be willing to be like me, because I'm telling you, if the CIA had me in that room, I would be like, are you guys crazy? It's a freaking triangle. You guys need to get your heads checked. Why are you all saying square? You got to be bold like that, you guys. Trust your gut. Your gut is God-given.